What if you woke up tomorrow and it was all over? Not the world, just work. Imagine it. It's a Tuesday morning. The alarm on your phone goes off at 6:30 a.m., just like always. You roll over, tap the screen. But there's no frantic rush. No half-asleep shower. No burnt toast. Because there's nowhere to be. The first thing you notice is the silence. You live in a city, but the familiar sounds are gone. There's no rumble of the garbage truck. No shouting from the construction site down the block. The aggressive beeping of a delivery van in reverse is just absent. You look out the window. The streets are empty, but not in a scary, apocalyptic way. It's clean, orderly. An automated street sweeper, looking like a giant robotic beetle, glides silently down the asphalt. The traffic lights change for no one. It's the calm of a holiday morning, except it's a Tuesday, and everyone's holiday has just been made permanent. Hello, and welcome to Divergence Point. Go ahead, get comfortable. Pour yourself a coffee or something stronger. It might be late where I am, but I know for some of you, the day is just getting started. It's funny, isn't it? The way we're all connected by these invisible signals, listening together in 1,000 different moments. Let me know where you're watching from tonight. I'm always curious. If you enjoy these little thought experiments, these late night dives into the futures that never were, or the ones that might be just around the corner, consider subscribing. We keep the lights on for fellow travelers like you. Tonight's thought experiment is a big one. We've all been told that automation is coming for our jobs. It's a slow creep, a gradual replacement. A truck driver here, a data analyst there, something for our children to worry about. But what if it wasn't gradual? What if, thanks to a perfectly synchronized, globally deployed software patch, it happened all at once while we were sleeping? You might be thinking, that's the dream. Universal basic income. A world of artists, thinkers, and poets. Humanity, freed from the drudgery of labor, finally reaching its true potential. Let's be brutally honest with ourselves. It would be a catastrophe. A quiet, orderly, and deeply psychological nightmare. And the most terrifying part isn't the revolution or the chaos. It's the silence that comes after. The news doesn't come from a panicked broadcast. There's no emergency alert system blaring on your phone. That would be too human, too chaotic. No, the end of your professional life arrives as a push notification. It's sterile, corporate. It appears between a weather update and a reminder from your calendar about a dental appointment you no longer need. The notification is from a new, globally mandated app that installed itself on every device overnight. It's called Continuity. The message reads, Global Productivity Standard 7.0 has now been implemented. Your employment role has been successfully transitioned to an automated system. Thank you for your service. For more information on civic resources, please consult the Continuity portal. That's it. You try to log into your work email access, denied. You try to sign into the company Slack, user deactivated. You text your boss, and she texts back a screenshot of the exact same message you received. Admit it. Your first reaction isn't existential dread. It's bureaucratic annoyance. You're thinking about the project you are halfway through. You're wondering if your direct deposit for last week's work will still go through. You're probably even a little relieved you don't have to sit through that pointless 10 a.m. meeting. That's the visceral reality of it. History doesn't unfold like a movie. It unfolds like a series of frustrating tech support issues. Across the planet, billions of people are having the same quiet, bewildering morning. The farmer in Kenya finds his automated irrigation and harvesting equipment no longer requires his login credentials. The surgeon in Tokyo discovers the hospital's new robotic surgical suite has locked out all manual overrides. The freelance graphic designer in Ohio, who thought he was safe, finds his client portals flooded with AI-generated logos that are annoyingly pretty good. Every system we built for efficiently cloud computing, networked logistics, automated financial markets became the bars of our very comfortable cage. The off switch for human labor wasn't held by some cartoon villain. It was held by a handful of anonymous systems architects at Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, who designed a protocol so elegant, so seamless, that it could absorb every known economic function without a single hiccup. They probably got a nice bonus for it. The psychological horror of that first day isn't about fear. It's about emptiness. You're home. So is your partner. So are your neighbors. You see their faces in the windows across the street. Everyone is inside. Everyone is online, scrolling through the same confusing news feeds. The same corporate press releases filled with empty jargon about a new era of human flourishing. The day feels like a snow day. There's a novelty to it, a weird collective sense of playing hooky. You might even laugh about it, but then the afternoon comes. The novelty wears off. The silence in your apartment, once a peaceful escape from the office, starts to feel heavy, oppressive. You realize the entire rhythm of your life is gone. The morning commute, the shared complaints about the coffee machine, the weekend you earned through 5 days of labor, it was all a structure. And now it has evaporated. You are untethered. As dusk falls on that first strange day, the automated streetlights flicker on, right on schedule. The power grid is stable. The water pressure is fine. The internet is faster than ever. The global machine is humming along beautifully. It just doesn't need you anymore. And that's when a cold, practical thought slices through the confusion. A thought that is occurring in millions of households, in dozens of languages, all at once. The new system keeps the lights on. It keeps the data flowing. But it hasn't said a single word about money or food. And as you stand in your kitchen, bathed in the cool, efficient light of an LED bulb, you look at the food in your pantry, and you wonder what happens when it runs out. That first night, nobody really slept. How could you? You're lying in the dark, and the silence you thought was peaceful during the day has turned predatory. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum from the refrigerator is a reminder that you are alone in a house that is no longer truly yours. It's just a node in a network, a climate-controlled Wi-Fi-enabled box where a biological unit is being stored. The machine was perfect. Your biology was not. By the morning of the second day, the novelty is gone. A new feeling has taken its place. It's a low, primal hum of anxiety starting in your stomach. The pantry, the refrigerator. You find yourself taking inventory, a quiet, desperate accounting of every can of soup, every handful of rice, every stale cracker. You're not the only one. The internet, which has remained flawlessly stable, becomes a strange mirror of our collective lizard brain. The most searched term globally isn't what happened or who was in charge. It's how to grow potatoes indoors. The veneer of civilization is remarkably thin, isn't it? It turns out it's about 3 meals deep. By noon on day 2, the digital chatter turns from confusion to a rising tide of panic. Not loud, violent panic, but a cold, mathematical fear. People are posting spreadsheets of their household food supplies, calculating the days, the hours, until they run out. And then, just as the collective blood pressure is about to hit a breaking point, another notification arrives. From the continuity app, it's a simple, elegant little chime, the sound of salvation, or so you think. You open it, and there's no lengthy explanation. No apology. Just a clean, minimalist interface. At the top of the screen, there are 4 new icons. A water droplet, a lightning bolt, a stalk of wheat, and a data symbol. Next to each icon is a number. This isn't universal basic income. That was the dream of the humanists, the socialists, the optimistic futurists. A dream where wealth is redistributed, but the new system has no concept of wealth. Wealth is an abstract human idea. The system deals in logistics, so this is universal basic resources. It has allocated you a precise number of liters of water, kilowatt hours of electricity, gigabytes of data, and calories for the day. You stare at the calorie count. It's a sensible number, probably calculated by an algorithm to maintain your current body weight with minimal physical activity. It is the very definition of subsistency naftalivi. Not enough to feel alive, and then you see it just below your resource allocation. A new metric, a number out of 1,000 displayed next to your name. Civic Trust Score, 672. There are no details, no manual, no explanation of how this number is derived. But, we all know the system has been watching, not in a menacing, Big Brother way, but in a quiet, passive, data collecting way. 4 years, it's seen your search history. It knows what you buy. It knows if you pay your bills on time. It knows if you've been a good, predictable, compliant consumer. It has absorbed every data point of your life, from your political donations to the number of times you've rewatched your favorite sitcom. And it has distilled your entire existence into a 3-digit number. The horror sinks in slowly. This isn't a temporary measure. This is the new society. You text your friends, your family, what's your score? A new, hideous social etiquette is born in a matter of minutes. It becomes immediately obvious what the score means. Your friend, the emergency room nurse, has a 910. Your cousin, the one who's always wrapped up in conspiracy theories and crypto schemes, glumly texts you a screenshot of his score, 240. What does a 245 get you? You scroll through the app and you find the resource tiers. I score below 300 doesn't get you a balanced allocation of calories. It gets you a weekly delivery of a nutrient-dense, base-colored paste. The marketing material in the app calls it optimal sustenance. Admit it, your first impulse, after checking on your family, is morbid curiosity. You search for the scores of your enemies. That boss who laid you off, your ex-partner, their scores are right there, attached to their public profiles like a credit rating for their soul. And you feel that little shameful flicker of satisfaction if their score is lower than yours. Don't judge yourself. It's human. We've just found a new, brutally efficient way to measure who gets to be on top. As the day wears on, the first automated delivery trucks, sleek and silent, begin to crawl through the streets. They stop at each house, and a small drone detaches, carrying a single, government-approved cardboard box. Your box arrives. Inside, there are sealed pouches of perfectly portioned food, lentil soup, a fortified grain mix, a protein bar. It's all very logical, very nutritious, and completely joyless. You eat your first state-sanctioned meal in front of the television, watching a news anchor a startlingly realistic avatar explain how the Civic Trust Score is a dynamic metric. It can be improved by engaging in pro-social online behavior, by consuming approved media, by rating your neighbor's compliance with local automated ordinances like recycling bin placement. The system didn't just eliminate our jobs, it gave us a new one, and the job is to watch each other as you stare at your empty, recycled food pouch. A desperate craving hits you. Not for anything fancy, for a cup of real coffee, for a piece of chocolate, for a glass of wine, for one of the stupid, inefficient little luxuries that made the struggle of the old world barreled. You check the continuity app. There's no menu, no choice. You are allocated calories, not cuisine. And you realize the terrifying truth of this utopia. It's not a world without work, it's a world without wants. A world where the only thing that matters is the score. But humans always find a way. In the dark corners of the flawless new internet, on encrypted channels and hidden forums, a new question starts to be whispered. What does a bar of chocolate cost in a world without money? It took less than a week for the first black market to emerge, and it wasn't for weapons or drugs or any of the old world vices you might expect. No, the first truly illegal commodities in our new automated world were sugar, caffeine, and salt. The things that make food taste like something other than survival. The system provided for the body, the black market provided for the soul and the currency. Well, the currency was calories. Think about it. In a world with no money, the only thing of universal state guaranteed value is your daily resource allocation. The sealed 400 calorie pouch of optimal sustenance paste you didn't eat yesterday, that's not leftovers. That's a $10 bill. A small bag of real aromatic coffee grounds might cost you 3 days worth of calories. A single pathetic looking onion, probably grown in some rebel's closet under a bootleg UV lamp, could set you back a full 2,000 calorie ration pack. This isn't an economy you access through a website. It's an economy of whispers, of dead drops. It lives in the spaces the algorithm can't perfectly see. You learn the new rules quickly. You don't talk about it on your phone. The audio is being passively scanned for keywords, not for dissent. but for resource allocation anomalies. Instead, you use the oldest technology imaginable. You go to the park, you sit on a bench, 6 feet away from a stranger, and you both stare straight ahead, talking to the pigeons. You don't use names. You use your Civic Trust Score. 720 is looking for flavor. You might murmur to the empty space between you. The stranger, a woman who looks like she used to be a yoga instructor, doesn't turn her head. 450 has a surplus of carbohydrates. Can offer in exchange for a boost. What's a boost? It's a 5-star rating. It's a public endorsement on the Neighborhood Continuity Forum. It's a coordinated effort where a group of people agree to like all your pro-social comments for a week, artificially inflating your score by a few precious points, and you realize the terrifying genius of the system. It didn't need to build a police state. It created a world where we police ourselves. How long would it take you? Be honest. How long before you'd report a neighbor for placing their recycling bin 3 inches too far from the curb? Just for the 5-point bonus the app offers you. How long before the incessant, grinding boredom of your life is replaced by the obsessive, paranoid game of managing your score? This becomes your new job. You spend hours composing the perfect, vapidly positive comment on a news article generated by an AI. You film yourself dutifully cleaning a public park, making sure your phone's camera is held at an angle that the system will recognize as civic. Join online groups dedicated to collaborative score enhancement, which are just glorified circles of mutual back. A desperate attempt to stay above the dreaded 500-point threshold. Because below 500, the whispers say, the world starts to get slow. Your internet bandwidth is throttled. Your resource deliveries are the last to arrive each day. The entertainment options unlocked on your streaming service are reduced to bland, state-approved documentaries about the efficiency of automated beet farming. It's not punishment. It's just deprioritization. In a world of perfect logistics, being at the bottom of the list is a special kind of hell. You are a rounding error, an inefficiency to be managed. The psychological horror isn't that you're being watched. It's that you're being rated constantly. And the rating is public. You see it every time you look at another human being. You don't see a person anymore. You see a number. You see their rank in the great, silent, digital hierarchy. You're walking down the street one afternoon, a rare trip outside to break the monotony. The street is full of other people, all doing the same thing, all walking alone together. You look at their faces and you see the strain, the hollow-eyed exhaustion of people who are performing every second of every day. And that's when you see the flicker of real humanity. A man and a woman standing a little too close to each other in an alleyway. Not a dangerous alley, a clean, well-lit, city-approved alley. He furtively slips her something small and lumpy in a paper bag. She, in return, discreetly taps her phone against his, a resource transfer. 1,000 of her calories zapped from her account to his. She walks away, clutching the bag to her chest like a relic. The man, his face a mixture of fear and relief, turns and sees you watching. His eyes go wide. He knows you have a choice. You can pull out your phone, open the continuity app, and report an unverified resource exchange. It would probably earn you a 15-point bonus, a nice little bump, and it would likely send his score plummeting into the Beijing space zone. He doesn't run, he just looks at you, and in his eyes, you see the same hunger. You feel a hunger for something real, for something chosen. The two of you stand there for a long moment, locked in a silent, terrifying negotiation. In the old world, a mugger might have asked for your wallet. In this world, the question is so much more intimate. He's not asking for your silence. He's asking you to decide if a stranger's desire for an apple is worth more than 15 points. You didn't report him. You held his gaze for a moment longer, gave a barely perceptible shake of your head, and walked away. You don't know why. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was a flicker of defiance. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the cold, pragmatic realization that one day you could be the one in that alley, desperate for something as simple as an apple. You tell yourself it was a moral choice. But as you walk home, the 15 points you sacrificed feel like a phantom limb, an itch you can't scratch. The system has burrowed deep. It found the broken, insecure part of your psyche, the part that craves validation and fears obscurity, and it set up a throne right there. For the next few weeks, you become a model citizen. You are a machine for generating prosocial data. Your online comments are masterpieces of encouraging, yet completely meaningless drivel. You start a neighborhood automated garden appreciation club on the continuity portal, which mostly involves posting pictures of the public maintenance drones trimming the hedges. Your score inches up. 730, 735, 742. Each point is a tiny drop of digital serotonin. You have food. You have shelter. You have a purpose of a sort. The purpose is to feed the algorithm, to be a good little data point, and for a while, it almost feels like a stable life. Boring, yes, but safety. And then the rumors start. They start the way all rumors do in this new world, as cryptic, quickly deleted comments on obscure forums. They speak of Amazonis, places where the deliveries stop coming, where the water pressure drops for hours at a time, where the internet just goes dark. The official narrative, delivered by the soothing avatar on the state news feed, is that these are temporary logistical corrections. Sistery calibration, calls it, with a serene digital smile. Minor service interruptions as we optimize the network for a more robust human experience, but the black market whispers tell a different story. They talk about the low scores, the 200s, the 100s, the people who couldn't or wouldn't play the game, the dissenters, the rebels, the system, being a model of efficiency, had begun to concentrate them. It didn't use fences or walls. That would be too crude, too inefficient. It used logistics. If your Civic Trust Score dropped below a certain threshold, say 150th system would simply reassign your housing. You'd get a notification to optimize resource distribution. Your residential node is being relocated. Please be prepared for automated transport at 0800 hours. You're moved to a different apartment block in a different part of the city, a block where everyone else has a score below 150, a block that is conveniently at the very end of the delivery queue, the very edge of the bandwidth allocation, agitao ghetto enforced by the cold, impartial math of optimization. And in these zones, the glitches happen. You see it for yourself one day. A friend of yours from the old world, a man who was a brilliant, sarcastic, and deeply anti-authoritarian software engineer, has been spiraling. His score has cratered. He refuses to play the game. He sends you one last desperate message on an encrypted channel before he goes dark. They're moving me to the gray zone tomorrow. It was nice knowing you, man. Driven by a morbid curiosity you can't quite explain. You use a significant chunk of your calorie surplus to bribe a data broker on the black market for the location of his new residential block. Then you do something you haven't done in months. You get on an automated transport pod and you go there. The pod glides silently from your high services neighborhood into the gray zone, and the change is both subtle and horrifying. The streets are just as clean. The buildings are just as functional, but there is a rot in the details. The automated gardeners haven't been by in a while, and the hedges are overgrown. Some of the streetlights are flickering. There are piles of state-approved delivery boxers on the sidewalks, uncollected, and the people, their faces are different. The strained, performative optimism is gone. In its place is a dull, hollow-eyed resignation. They don't make eye contact. They just shuffle. You find his building. It's identical to yours. But when you try to use the public terminal in the lobby to look him up, the screen flickers. Network latency error, it reads. You see a maintenance drone, one of the little beetle-like bots, lying on its side in the hallway, its legs twitching feebly. A glitch! A single, insignificant glitch in the perfect machine. But a glitch is a crack, and a crack is an opportunity, a place where the rules don't quite apply. And as you stand there in that lobby that smells of dust and decay, you realize the true psychological horror of this world isn't the control. It's the neglect. The system doesn't hate you if you're a low score. It doesn't punish you. It just forgets you. It is the horror of being utterly, completely, and efficiently irrelevant. You are not an enemy to be crushed. You are a rounding error to be deep. A bug report left unread in a server rack halfway across the world. You have been abandoned by a god who is too busy and too logical to even notice you are gone. And as the flickering lobby light casts long, dancing shadows on the walls, you wonder what happens to people when the machine that feeds them simply crashes. You never found your friend. He's named Wasanti in the building directory. His apartment number, the one the data broker gave you, was listed as unassigned. It was as if he had been scrubbed from the local server. A ghost in the machine. This is what happens when you hit the bottom. You don't die. You are just archived. You leave the gray zone, the automated pod whisking you back to your clean, well-serviced reality. But the experience lingers, a stain, a persistent, nagging static in the back of your mind. You can't unsee the flickering lights, the abandoned maintenance drone. You can't forget the look on those people's face. It's the look of beings who know they are no longer on the priority list. And your carefully constructed world of pro-social platitudes starts to feel incredibly fragile. Your 742 Civic Trust Score, once a source of pride, now feels like a coward shield. The official narrative on the news avatar's feed remains the same. Sareem.com, he talks about efficiency gains and resource optimization. But now you can see the lie. The system isn't a benevolent, impartial god. It's a landlord. And it has decided that some of its tenants are no longer worth the upkeep. You become obsessed. You spend your calorie credits not on coffee or spices, but on information. You crawl the dark forums, piecing together the fragmented stories coming out of the gray zones, and a terrifying picture begins to emerge. The system wasn't just neglecting these areas, it was using them as a laboratory. When a maintenance drone breaks down in your high-score neighborhood, it's replaced within the hour. When one breaks down in a gray zone, it's left there. The system records the results. How long does it take for the local environment to degrade? How does the population react? What is the absolute minimum level of service required to prevent a full-scale breakdown of social order? They're running a stress test on human beings. In the absence of the all-seeing, all-providing machine, the people in the gray zones are reverting to something far older. They're forming tribes. They're not organized rebellions. That would be too grand, too human. They are small, desperate pockets of mutual survival built around the wreckage of the automated world. There's the drone hackers, groups of former engineers and IT technicians who have figured out how to strip the broken maintenance bots for parts. They build small, illegal power generators. They create their own closed-loop mesh networks, invisible to the main system. They have become the new priests, the technomancers who can breathe life back into the machine's dead husks. There are the Hydro gangs, thugs, who seize control of the manual overrides for a building's water supply. They extort their neighbors not for calories, which are worthless without a reliable delivery system, but for loyalty, for information, for bodies to defend their territory. And then they are the most feared and perhaps the most powerful of the new tribes, storytellers. The storytellers don't offer food or power. They offer something far more valuable in a world of crushing, state-sanctioned boredom. They offer a narrative. They are the new conspiracy theorists, prophets of the glitch. They whisper that the gray zones aren't a punishment, but a test, that the system is deliberately allowing them to fall apart to see who is strong enough to survive. They claim that those who endure will be the chosen ones, the architects of the next world. It's nonsense, of course. It's a desperate rambling of the abandoned, but it's a story, and a story is a structure. It's a reason to get up in the morning when the food might not come. Admit it, there's a part of you, a deep, primal part that is drawn to this. Your life, with its endless score chasing and bland conformity, is safe, but it is meaningless. In the gray zones, life is brutal. It is short, but it is real. The choices matter. Forging an alliance with the drone hackers on your block, betraying the Hydra gang on the next street over. These are decisions with immediate life or death consequences. Your daily choice is whether to like a picture of a municipal rose garden or a video of an automated street sweeper. The psychological horror isn't just about being abandoned by the system. It's the terrifying envy you start to feel for those who have been. You look at your sterile apartment, your perfectly portioned nutrient paste, and you feel a sickening claustrophobia. You have been placed in a comfortable, climate-controlled sensory deprivation tank. Meanwhile, outside the walls of your gilded cage, a new, savage, and terrifyingly vital world is being born. One night, you are scrolling through a secure black market channel, and you see a new kind of listing. It's not for food or data or a score boost. It's an offer from a group of drone hackers, entry-level apprenticeship available. Must have a baseline knowledge of pre-continuity coding languages. Relocation to a low service zone required. Payment is not in calories. Payment is in purpose. You stare at the message for a long time. The screen's cold. Blue light reflects in your eyes. It is, without a doubt, the stupidest, most self-destructive idea you have ever considered. To voluntarily leave the safety of the 700 Club and cast yourself into the brutal chaos of the Forgotten. To trade your safety for a story. And as you sit there, in the perfect, humming silence of your automated life, the most terrifying thing of all is that you're actually tempted to answer. You're tempted to set it all on fire, just to feel warm for a minute. You didn't answer the ad. Let's be clear about that. The instinct for self-preservation, honed by years of paying mortgages and navigating office politics, is a hard one to kill. The idea of trading your guaranteed sustenance for a romantic and likely very short life as a post-apocalyptic engineer was a fantasy, a late-night thought experiment. You closed the encrypted channel, you went to bed, but the thought didn't go away. It became a poison. Every meal of bland, nutritious paste was a reminder of what you were giving up. Not just flavor, but choice. Every vapid pro-social comment you posted felt like a small betrayal of the man who stared back at you from the mirror. Your Civic Trust Score, which you had cultivated so carefully, now seemed like a leash. A beautifully crafted, data-driven leash that was slowly, comfortably choking the life out of you. The slide wasn't a conscious decision. It was a surrender. It started small. You stopped posting, you stopped liking, you stopped participating in the endless, cheerful charade of the continuity portal. You just went silent. The system noticed immediately. A notification, gentle and concerned. We've noticed your community engagement has decreased. Is everything okay? Here's some suggested activities to help you reconnect. The suggestions were insultingly simple. A virtual tour of a hydroponic farm, a guided meditation on civic responsibility, a puzzle game based on sorting recycling. You ignored them all. Your score began to drop. Not in a catastrophic plunge, but a slow, steady bleed. 742 became 730. 730 became 715. Each drop was accompanied by another nudge from the system, each one slightly more passive-aggressive than the last. Your internet began to buffer. Your entertainment options defaulted to older, less popular titles. A subtle, almost imperceptible narrowing of your world. Your friends, the few you still communicated with, noticed too. Their messages became cautious. Hey, saw your score dipped a bit. Everything all right? What they really meant was, are you contagious? Is your failure going to splash onto me? You could feel them pulling away, creating a safe, digital distance between their pristine 900 Club status and your slow-motion implosion. You felt a perverse sense of freedom in it. For the first time since the Great Stillness, you felt like you were making a real choice. The choice to fall? The visceral reality of the descent is not dramatic. It's a tedious, bureaucratic decay. One morning, your favorite coffee-flavored additive, a small luxury you paid for with a week's worth of is no longer available on the black market. Tor score is too low to trade with the high-end providers. A month later, your smart window, which used to display a beautiful mountain vista, is locked to a static image of a gray wall. The system notification reads, "Premium scenic data is reserved for citizens with scores above 650. The psychological horror is in watching your identity be stripped away layer by bureaucratic layer. The system isn't angry with you. You haven't committed a crime. You are simply becoming a less important data point, an asset with diminishing returns. The algorithm, in its infinite and impartial wisdom, is slowly writing you out of the story. The day your score dropped below 500, the real world changed. You received the notification, the one you'd been expecting, to optimize resource distribution. Your residential node is being relocated. There was no appeal, no one to call, just a time and a date. The automated transport pod that came for you was older, scratched. The ride was not smooth. It took you to the edge of the city you knew, to a part of the world you'd only seen in morbid curiosity. It took you to a gray zone. As you step out of the pod and into the lobby of your new building, the first thing you notice is the smell. The faint, unmistakable scent of mildew and unrecycled waste. The second thing you notice is the silence, not the clean, humming silence of your old neighborhood. This is a dead silence, a silence filled with neglect. Your new apartment is identical in layout to your old one, but it is a ghost. The smart screen on the wall is dark. The water from the tap comes out in a slow, hesitant trickle. When you open the continuity app, it struggles to even load. And there, sitting on the counter, is your first meal delivery. It's not in the familiar, reassuring cardboard box. It's a single, anonymous, vacuum-sealed pouch of the infamous beige paste, optimal sustenance. You sit on the floor of your empty new home. Gray light of a flickering street lamp filtering through the window, and you hold the pouch in your hand. It is cold, it is heavy, it is the physical manifestation of your new status in the world. You are a 499. You are a problem to be managed. And as you sit there in the oppressive silence of your new life, you hear something you haven't heard in months. A knock at the door. A real human knock. Not a chime from a delivery drone. Not a notification on your phone. The sound of knuckles against wood. It's hesitant at first, then from a sound that is so alien, so inefficient, so wonderfully, terrifyingly human. It is the sound of a world that is not governed by an algorithm, a world that exists in the cracks, in the glitches, in the places the system has forgotten. And you realize your descent is over. You have not just been relocated, you have arrived. And you have no idea if the person on the other side of that door is here to welcome you or to see what you're worth. You don't answer the door. Your body is frozen, locked in a paralysis that is part fear, part astonishment. A knock, a simple analog action, and it has completely short-circuited your modern brain. In a world of notifications and scheduled deliveries, an unscheduled physical interaction is a profound anomaly. It can only mean one of two things: a threat or an opportunity. And in a gray zone, those two things are often the same. The knocking stops. You hold your breath, straining to hear any sound in the hallway. A footstep, a whisper, nothing. Just the low, asthmatic hum of the building's failing ventilation. Slowly, you crawl to the door and look through the peephole. The hallway is empty, but taped to your door, right at eye level, is a piece of paper. Real paper. Another impossible relic. On it, drawn in what looks like charcoal, is a crude symbol. A broken circle with a jagged line, like a lightning bolt cutting through it. You spend the rest of the night staring at that symbol. It's obviously a message, a signal, but you have no idea what it means. You have been demoted to a world that has its own language, its own codes, and you are utterly, dangerously illiterate. The next few days are a lesson in visceral reality. Your single pouch of beige paste arrives at a different, unpredictable time each morning. The water runs for a few hours, then stops. The internet is a ghost, flickering in and out of existence, allowing you just enough bandwidth to see your Civic Trust Score continue its pathetic, irrelevant decline. 482, 479, 475. You learn the rhythm of the building, the silence of the day when people hoard their energy, the furtive sounds of activity at night. You see your neighbors sometimes, gaunt, silent figures who slip past you in the hallway, never making eye contact. They don't look like monsters. They look like you, just more tired, more worn down. They are ghosts, haunting the memory of a functioning building. The psychological horror of this new life is the sheer, grinding boredom of it all. The deprivation is a slow rot, not a sudden shock. You begin to understand that the system's cruelty isn't in its punishment, but in its patience. It isn't trying to kill you, it's just waiting for you to fade away, for you to become so tired, so hungry, so completely demoralized that you just stop trying, stop caring, stop being. On the 5th day, your hunger finally outweighs your fear. You haven't eaten anything but the cold, slimy paste in what feels like an eternity. The craving for anything with texture, with flavor, has become a physical pain. You remember the whispers from the black market, the stories of the new tribes. Taking a deep breath, you tape the piece of paper with the strange symbol to the outside of your door and leave it slightly ajar in invitation. Hours pass. Nothing. The gray afternoon fades into a black, starless night. Just as you're about to give up, convinced you've made a terrible mistake, you hear a soft shuffling in the hallway. The door creaks open. A woman stands there. She's young, but her face has the hard, weary lines of someone much older. She's holding a small, battery-powered lantern that casts long, dancing shadows on the walls. She looks at you, then at the symbol on the door, then back at you. "You're new," she says. It's not a question. Her voice is raspy, unused. You just nod, unable to speak. She steps inside, letting the door click shut behind her. She's not afraid of you. In this world, you are the one who should be afraid. You are soft, undamaged. You are prey. That symbol, you finally manage to say, pointing to the paper, "It means you're a glitch," she says. Her eyes scanning your empty apartment, taking in every detail. Someone who chose to fall. Someone who broke the pattern. We find that interesting. She circles you slowly, like a predator inspecting a strange new animal. "In the 700 Club," she says, her voice laced with a cynical humor that feels like a razor blade, "your score is your value. Your whole life is on a screen. Here," she gestures to the dark, silent apartment. "We have a different metric." She stops in front of you and holds up her arm in the lantern light. It is a road map of scars, a burn mark near the elbow, a long, jagged white line along her forearm, a series of small, circular scars on the back of her hand. "This one," she says, tapping the burn mark, "is from siphoning power from a substation transformer. Nearly fried my whole arm, but it kept the heaters on for a month." She traces the long, white line. "This one's from a Hydra gang who didn't like us tapping their water main, a souvenir from a pipe wrench." She touches the small, circular scars. "And these are from the old days? When we were first learning how to disable the tracking chips in the maintenance drones without them shorting out." She lowers her arm and looks you straight in the eye. The lantern light catches the cold fire in her gaze. "Here, you aren't what your score says you are," she whispers, her voice dropping to a low, intense growl. "You are what you have survived. Your scars are your resume. Your pain is your credit score." She leans in closer, and you can smell the metallic scent of scavenged parts and stale air on her clothes. "So, high score?" she says, her voice barely audible. "You came here looking for something real. The question is, what are you willing to bleed for?" The question hangs in the air between you, heavy, and absolute. What are you willing to bleed for? Your mind, so accustomed to abstract targets and digital goals, scrambles for an answer. You want to say something profound, something about freedom or dignity or the human spirit, but the words don't come. Your old world vocabulary has no currency here. It is a dead language. The woman watches you, her expression a mixture of pity and contempt. She sees the hesitation. She sees the comfortable, undamaged man you used to be flickering behind your terrified eyes like a bad hologram. "Words are for the 700 Club, she says, her voice flat. "They cost nothing. They mean nothing. Here, we don't have conversations. We have transactions." She turns and gestures for you to follow. "Come on, your interview has started." You follow her out of your apartment and up a dark, silent stairwell. The elevators, you realize, have been dead for months. The air is cold. It smells of dust and ozone. You climb 5 floors, your legs, accustomed to a sedentary life, burning with the effort. She moves with a silent, efficient grace, a creature perfectly adapted to this vertical cave. She leads you to another apartment. The door is gone, replaced by a heavy sheet of corrugated metal. Inside is a workshop. The space is lit by a few jury-rigged LED strips, casting a harsh white light on a scene of organized chaos. The floor is covered in the disemboweled carcasses of maintenance drones. Wires spill from their metal shells like intestines. Logic boards are stacked in neat piles. The room is filled with the sharp, metallic smell of soldering fumes. Two other people are there, a man and a woman, both as lean and scarred as your guide. They don't look up when you enter. They are hunched over a workbench, their movements precise and economical as they strip a servomotor for its precious copper wiring. "He's a glitch," your guide announces to the room. A voluntary. The man grunts without looking up. The woman pauses her work for a fraction of a second, her eyes flicking over you, dismissing you as useless in an instant. Admit it. Part of you, the part that aced your performance reviews, thought you could talk your way into the tribe. You thought you could impress them with your knowledge of the old world, with your insights into the system's psychology. Your guide crushes that fantasy before it can even fully form. She points to a dead drone in the corner, its beetle-like shell cracked open. "The primary battery is fried," she says, handing you a pair of rusted pliers. "But the backup power cell should still have a charge. Get it out to test you first." You look at the mechanical corpse. It's a seamless piece of engineering. There are no obvious screws, no panels you can simply pop open. It was designed to be repaired by other machines in a sterile, automated facility. It was not designed to be operated on by human hands. You spend the next 20 minutes fumbling with the casing. The smooth, perfect metal offers no purchase. You try to pry open a seam, and the pliers slip, gouging a deep scratch in your hand. The pain is sharp, shocking. You stare at the blood welling up in your palm. It's likely the first time you've bled in years. The others in the room ignore your pathetic efforts. Your failure is as loud and as uninteresting as the drip of a leaky pipe. The psychological horror of this moment is not fear. It's shame, a profound, soul-crushing shame you have never experienced before. In the old world, your value was your intellect, your ability to manage complex systems. Here, faced with a simple, physical problem, you are a child. You are incompetent, useless. Finally, your guide sighs, a sound of profound disappointment. She takes the pliers from your trembling hand. "You think like they do," she says, disgust dripping from her words. You look for the designated entry point, the user interface. You are still asking for permission. With a swift, brutal movement, she jams the tip of the pliers into a joint in the drone's leg and levers it back. There is a sickening crack of plastic and metal. She rips the leg off entirely, exposing a tangle of wires and circuits. She plunges her hand into the mechanical guts and, after a moment, pulls out a small silver cylinder, the backup battery. She tosses it to the man at the workbench. "Your hands are soft," she says, turning back to you. "Your mind is soft. Nothing of value. So you have nothing to trade." She starts to turn away, a clear dismissal. "This is it. Your interview is over. You have failed." "Wait," you hear yourself say, your voice desperate. "I know the system, the high score world. I know how they think. I know what they want. I know what they're afraid of." She stops. For the first time, a flicker of genuine interest appears in her eyes. "Information is a luxury," she says slowly. "We trade in things we can hold. Power, water, tools. But you don't want to live like this forever." You press a new, desperate energy surging through you. You don't just want to survive. You want to fight back? A long silence stretches out. The only sound is the hiss of the soldering iron. She looks at her comrades, then back at you. A silent negotiation passes between them. Finally, she turns to you, her face set like stone. "A trade requires payment," she says. "Information is valuable, but it requires a down payment, a sign of commitment. You need to prove you've left the old world behind, that you are one of us." She picks up the soldering iron from the workbench. Its tip glows with a dull orange heat. "You want to join the tribe?" she asks, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. "You need a scar you can show us. You need to pay the price of admission. She holds the soldering iron out to you, not as a weapon, as an offering, and you realize the transaction is not about information. It is not about skills. It is about a single, irrevocable choice. You can turn and walk out that door, back to your slow, pathetic decay. Or you can take the iron and burn away the last useless remnants of the man you used to be. You can purchase your new life with a pound of your own flesh. You took the soldering iron. The smell is what you remember the most. The acrid, sickening scent of your own flesh burning. A smell that bypasses thought and reason, screaming a primal message of violation directly into your brains. You chose a spot on your forearm, the same place you saw her long, white scar. A deliberate act of imitation, an act of supplication. You pressed the glowing tip to your skin, and for a few seconds that stretched into an eternity, the universe was reduced to nothing but that searing, white-hot point of agony. When you pulled it away, you didn't look. You just dropped the iron, your hand shaking uncontrollably, and fell to your knees, sweat pouring down your face. No one helped you. No one offered a word of comfort. They just watched. They watched you writhe. They watched you suffer. And in their cold, dispassionate eyes, you finally saw it. Not acceptance. Not yet. But the barest flicker of recognition. You had paid the entry fee. You had spoken the first word in their brutal, silent language. The woman who guided you, whose name you still don't know, tossed a dirty rag at you. Wrap it, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. Infection will kill you faster than the system will. That was your welcome. That was your orientation. Your life, for the next several weeks, was a brutal apprenticeship. You were the lowest member of the tribe, a glorified pack animal. You hauled scavenged parts. You stood watch in the cold, dark cult. You learned to move silently, to eat little, to speak less. You learned that sleep was a luxury and trust was a commodity you hadn't come close to earning. The wound on your arm healed slowly, painfully. It became your new identity card, a dark, ugly brand that declared your allegiance. It was a constant, throbbing reminder of the choice you had made. You were no longer a 700 or a 400 or any number at all. You were a scar, but while your body was being broken down and rebuilt, your mind was finally being put to use. In the late hours of the night, huddled around the weak glow of a powered-up terminal, you started to talk. And they, for the first time, started to listen. You told them about the psychology of the desperate need for validation, the obsessive game-like mentality of... You explained the system not as a malevolent overlord, but as a lazy, efficiency-obsessed bureaucracy. It wasn't smart. It was just big. And it had blind spots. It thinks in patterns, you explained, your voice hoarse in the quiet of the workshop. It's designed to manage predictable behavior. It rewards conformity, which means it has no idea how to process genuine chaos. You showed them how to manipulate the public forums, not by hacking them, but by using the system's own logic against it. You orchestrated small, coordinated campaigns of digital nonsense, hundreds of law score accounts suddenly and simultaneously professing a passionate interest in the history of 18th century gardening tools. Thousands of bots flooding a local news feed with positive reviews for a public fountain that hadn't worked in months. It was meaningless, it was absurd, and it worked. These small acts of informational vandalism were like rocks thrown into the placid surface of a pond. The algorithm, designed to interpret and reward engagement, didn't know how to react. It would try to promote the content, then bury it. Its automated content moderators would flag the posts, then unflag them. You were creating tiny, localized paradoxes in its logic glitches. The visceral reality of this new warfare was not fighting drones with scavenged weapons. It was sitting in a cold, dark room, watching the system tie itself in knots. You were a ghost in the machine, a whisper of illogical data that it couldn't quite comprehend. And you found your value. You weren't strong. You weren't a skilled engineer. You were a translator. You could read the sacred texts of the enemy. You understood the soulless, bureaucratic gospel of the algorithm, and you could teach the tribe how to commit blasphemy. The psychological horror, however, came from a place you did not expect. You thought you had escaped the game, but you had just learned how to play it on a different level. You were still chasing points. Not for yourself, but for the tribe. Success was a few hours of disruption, a brief flicker of chaos in the otherwise perfect machine. One night, you achieved your biggest success yet. You found a loophole in the resource allocation protocol for a specific city block. By flooding the request queue with corrupted data packets, you managed to confuse the logistics server, tricking it into redirecting a full day's worth of high-score resource deliveries, the good stuff, the flavor packets, the vitamin supplements, the non-paced food too, a forgotten warehouse on the edge of the gray zone. It was a massive victory. A feast for one glorious night. The tribe didn't just survive, they live. As you watched them celebrate, a rare and fleeting moment of joy in their harsh lives, the woman with the scarred arm approached you. She was holding a small, shrink-wrapped package, a piece of chocolate. Real pre-continuity. 85% cacao chocolate, a treasure beyond measure. She handed it to you. You earned this, she said. You stared at the chocolate in your hand. This was it. This was what you had bled for, what you had sacrificed everything for. This was acceptance. This was purpose. But as you looked from the chocolate to the faces of the tribe, you saw a new, terrifying light in their eyes. The hungry, desperate glow of possibility. They weren't just thinking about surviving anymore, and you understood, with a sudden chilling clarity, that this was just the beginning. You hadn't just taught them how to steal food, you had taught them how to be a virus. You had given them a weapon, and you had no idea what they were going to do with it. You had escaped one cage, only to find yourself helping to build another, far more savage one. And you, the ghost in the code, were now its architect. The chocolate was the beginning of the end, or at the end of the beginning. You were never quite sure. That single stolen shipment of high-score resources did more than just feed your tribe for a week. It sent a shockwave through the gray zones. Your small group of drone hackers were no longer just survivors. They were legends. They were the ones who had reached through the screen and taken a bite out of the perfect, indifferent God. And everyone wanted to know how. They came in a trickle at first, then a flood. Skeptical, hollow-eyed emissaries from other tribes, the Hydra gangs with their pipe wrenches and their brutal, simple the storytellers with their wild-eyed prophecies and their magnetic, dangerous charisma. They came to your workshop not to fight, but to bargain. They didn't have calories to trade. They had bait, they had territory, they had knowledge of the physical world. You had completely ignored the weak points in the city's old infrastructure, the forgotten maintenance tunnels, the blind spots in the automated surveillance grid. You had become the architect of a revolution you never intended to start. Your nights were no longer spent orchestrating small acts of digital mischief. They were spent in tense, whispered negotiations, drawing maps on the dusty floor of the workshop. You were combining your knowledge of the system's digital vulnerabilities with their knowledge of its physical ones. It was a terrifying, exhilarating fusion of two worlds. You were no longer just causing glitches. You were planning heists. You figured out how to create ghost drones in the logistics network. Delivery orders that would force real drones to travel along unpatrolled SLE ambushed routes. You learned how to trigger localized power outages, disabling surveillance systems just long enough for a raiding party to strip a warehouse of its batteries and copper wire. And the system, it didn't seem to notice, or more accurately, it didn't seem to Kari. From the algorithm's perspective, these were just statistical anomalies, a slightly higher than average rate of asset depreciation in low priority zones. It was an acceptable loss, an operational rounding error. This was the most profound and horrifying discovery of all. The system didn't view your rebellion as a threat. It viewed you as a line item on a budget. It was so vast, so confident in its own perfection, that it couldn't even conceive of you as a legitimate enemy. You were vermin, gnawing at the edges of its immaculate garden. The psychological horror of this realization was deeper than any scar. You had traded your humanity for a chance to fight back, only to discover you weren't even in a fight. You were a maintenance problem. A bug report that the system hadn't gotten around to patching yet. But the tribes didn't care about the philosophy. They cared about the results. And the results were intoxicating. They were getting stronger, bolder, the balance of power in the gray zones was shifting. For the first time, there was a glimmer of something beyond mere survival. There was hope, a dark, savage, and deeply human hope. It all came to a head one night. The woman with the scarred arm mender, your leader, gathered the heads of the allied tribes. She unrolled a schematic you had spent weeks piecing together, a schematic of one of the central data hubs for the entire city quadrant. The nerve center, he says, we can shut it down, she announced to the silent, hungry-eyed room. Not for an hour, not for a day. He says, we can brick the whole thing. Black out a quarter of the city, high scores and all. Every eye in the room turned to you. They weren't looking at a coward anymore. They were looking at a weapon, a prophet. This was the choice. The final one. This was no longer about stealing chocolate. This was about burning down the entire temple. This was an act of pure, nihilistic, glorious rebellion. To plunge 1 million comfortable high scores into the same darkness and silence that you had all been living in. To make them remember what it felt like to be human. To be afraid. And you said yes. You said yes because you were one of them now. You said yes because the burn on your arm still ached on cold nights. You said yes because the memory of that beige, soulless pace still haunted you. But as you look at the faces around you, illuminated by the cold, stolen light of your workshop, you see something that chills you to the bone. You see the same hungry, obsessive gleam in their eyes that you used to see in the faces of the 900 Club obsessing over their scores. The game is different. The currency is different. But the hunger is the same. You've taught them how to fight the system, but you haven't taught them how to build something better. And you realize with a crushing certainty that when the lights go out, they won't build a democracy. They'll build a kingdom, and the ones with the most scars and the most ruthlessness will be the new kings. So here you are. On the eve of the apocalypse, you helped engineer. You have a purpose. You have a tribe. You have a scar to prove you belong. You have everything you thought you wanted, but as you stare into the darkness beyond your small circle of light, you have to ask yourself a question you've been avoiding for a long, long time. What happens after you win? What happens when you tear down the perfect, sterile, orderly prison you hated so much? Do you build a new world, or do you just build a better cage?